Hello, happiness abounders, and welcome back. Today, I'm really excited to continue our discussion about what is self-care and specifically dive into when we should do self-care based on our triggers instead of in lack. So here's what I mean by that. It's like if you have I'm going to say it's more intellectual and kind of physical to do a budget as a form of self-care, right? Not fun, not sexy, but it's there. Right? But it totally depends on when you use that self-care and how you prioritize it. So if you're like, you know what, I really need to do a budget. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed and not very confident in my money right now. I need to do a budget. That's based on the trigger of feeling overwhelmed. Whereas if it's, you know what, I need to pay the bills, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, I need to do a budget so I can see where I can scrape and pull every last cent, that's coming from lack. So that's what I want to talk about today, which is the difference between those two when it comes to your self-care. Because one of those is coming from that place of preemptiveness, being like, oh, I'm slightly triggered by this, or something is indicating to me I should probably move in this direction, which is pretty solid, versus waiting until you absolutely need to. Which goes back to our episode on yesterday about feeling prepared and organized, but also our first episode of when do you do self-care, right? When do you prioritize that self-care? For most of us, probably until we have this discussion here, it's based on lack, right? It's based on I'm feeling so overwhelmed and I just can't function anymore and I just need some time to myself. Like that's in lack because you're missing out on all these things and you feel like you need to take care of yourself to get it. As opposed to seeing those indicators early on and going, okay, it's time to prioritize this, let's do it. Now, I'm not saying a budget is like a one-time thing. That's something that you would do regularly and reoccurring, but it would come from that place of the trigger of, I want to feel safe and secure in my money. I want to know where it's going. And as a form of intellectual self-care, I want to have a budget so that I feel more in control. That's great. That's awesome self-care. But doing a budget from that place of lack, of I need to figure out all my expenses because I haven't been paying any attention before, and now I need to pay bills and I can't afford it, I need to do a budget to see where I can pull from. Not saying that's bad. But what I am saying is that that's from a place of lack, which means you're not setting yourself up for success. Your self-care from a place of lack is a one and done deal to try and alleviate those feelings of overwhelm and try to get you through the situation that you've put yourself in. Whereas coming from a place of indication and triggers, you're able to set yourself up to do it reoccurring so that you can continue to be in your best self and continue to look at all areas of self-care equally. So I'm hoping that resonates with you because it totally resonates with me. It's one of those things that I really have struggled to connect the dots on. Because frankly, it feels luxurious to have self-care, right? If we think of it in terms of spa days, massages, money, right? Things that take time and money that we may not have. It feels too luxurious to do that. And so we wait until it's absolutely necessary, and even then sometimes we don't do it. And I'm not saying spa days are the only form of self-care, but you understand where I'm going with this, right? So we wait too long, and then it comes from this place of lack, where if we can see the indications firsthand, then they're indicators, so we can preemptively put in some self-care to realign ourselves, to reconnect, recalibrate, and continue to move towards our best selves in all of those areas. So I use a budget because I feel like money is something we can all connect to in that sense. This may be an overgross generalization, but I think we've all been like, okay, I have no idea where my money's going. I don't know what to do here. I need to set up a budget because I need to pay bills and maybe I can cut something out or I'll find some money magically, right? But hopefully we've all also been on the other side where it's like, okay, it's the first of the month. I know my bills are due here. I'm going to do a budget and really see where my money's going and really help me understand that if I do go eat out 5 times a week, I'm not going to be able to pay that bill. So I need to figure out my grocery budget and I need to figure out these other pieces. The peace of mind that comes from that is the self-care component. So what does that look like when it comes to physical, to emotional, to social, and spiritual self-care? right? The other one I can really think of for spiritual is very similar to the budget in the sense of not having a spiritual practice, whatever that is to you, right? No judgment here. But having that spiritual practice or not having it until crap hits the fan. And when crap hits the fan, it's like, I need all the help I can get. I have to have a spiritual practice. That's coming from this place of lack. Whereas implementing something that's a consistent spiritual practice is a way to help you reconnect, recalibrate, and realign so that those moments of I really need this right now don't really come. Because you've had it all the way through. You've had that support of yourself all the way through. Now again, I will not get into the spiritual complexities of what that could be or what that should be. I don't believe there should be anything. If you don't have a spiritual practice, that's fine. I'm not saying it in a religious context, but in a connecting to yourself, or if you believe in a higher power, and coming from a place of, I feel like I need a little bit of connection right now, as opposed to I need something to save me and I'll just throw a Hail Mary up and hope that something works. Intellectual, coming from a place of lack, is you've had this opportunity to learn and grow in a space that maybe you really care about, and you haven't done it because you've been too busy, you haven't set aside the time, you didn't want to challenge yourself because you have a million and one other things going on, and now there's an opportunity in front of you and you're like, crap, I have to hurry, go back and do that and really challenge myself intellectually and push myself and da-da-da-da. It's coming from a place of lack. And self-care, when we prioritize it by indicators, is really all about preparation. I'm going to say that again. Self-care, when it's prioritized by indicators, is all about preparation. We are preparing ourselves so that when things go south, when things aren't exactly the way that we want them to go, when we are in stressful situations, which we will have because we are humans, we are aligned and connected in the way that we need to be to ourselves. We are aligned and connected physically, emotionally, socially, intellectually, and spiritually in each of those areas. Those stressful moments aren't near as bad because we have been preparing for them in taking care of ourselves. So when we can prioritize self-care based on triggers or indicators as opposed to lack, those moments where in the past you really needed self-care because it was just too much to take, that never happens because you've been building the foundation and building blocks of that connection with yourself the whole time. So as we wrap up this theme week all about self-care, I want you to keep that in mind. Self-care is a form of preparation. And it can even be a form of prevention, right? Depending on what the situations that may be coming down the pipe may be. But it's an amazing form of taking care of yourself, connecting, realigning, recalibrating when you need to. So when those stressful moments happen, you're prepared to take them on and not washed away by them. Which brings us back to the whole point of this podcast, right? How can we be happier? Stressful things are going to happen and come up, but if we can be prepared and emotionally, mentally, physically, socially, spiritually connected to ourselves, we are prepared to handle those situations and be happier and bounce back faster than we would have if we just put all this stuff off and then tried to come from a place of lack and fix it later on. So that's something to think about this weekend as you go into the weekend and as you start to really explore self-care. I hope you will tune in next week as we dive into physical self-care and a couple of components of that to really explore and dive into. And through the following weeks, we'll be going also through emotional, social, and intellectual self-care. Skipping spiritual because I think that is very, very individual to you and what you believe, and that's not my place to say that, but I do think it is something that can be helpful in your happiness and self-care routines. So all of that said, as you go into the weekend, be thinking about, are you preparing? Are you coming from places of indication and self-care, or are you coming from places of lack? And what you can do to shift that perspective in your life and be happier and healthier in stressful situations. So, have a nice day. Have a great day. I hope that this episode resonated with you. If it did, share it with a friend or rate, review, and subscribe on your listening platform of choice. And above everything else, Remember, you are capable of happiness abound.